gets the camera ready, so this is my time to but I'm going to introduce myself for a moment, and then I'm going to give you a 10-minute, perhaps shorter, snapshot into what I'm doing for the diocese, because I call myself the mystery priest, because no one knows what I do. So this is a great opportunity to tell you. So my name is Father Kyle Ingels. I'm a native of the diocese. I'm one of the few priests who actually grew up here in Colorado Springs. We have a lot of wonderful priests from all over the country, but I'm a local, grew up down in St. Paul's Parish and Sacred Heart Parish, and graduated from Cheyenne Mountain High School. And then I went to Washington, D.C., where I studied at Catholic University and Mount St. Mary's, where we have some of our seminarians right now as well. Some of you know that I actually was ordained for the Archdiocese of Washington, so I served for about 8 years in the Archdiocese. I was an assistant pastor or parochial vicar, and then I was the chaplain at the University of Maryland, which is one of the largest campus ministry programs on the Eastern Seaboard. And then I was a pastor in Bowie, Maryland for 3.5 years. Bowie is a town outside of Annapolis, kind of between Washington and Annapolis, and I was a pastor of a beautiful church called Ascension, about 900 families. And then after living on the East Coast for about 18 years, I got fed up with the insanity. The traffic, the weather, people always in a bad mood, everybody's always grumpy, it's so humid. So I decided I needed to come back home, and I wrote Bishop Sheridan a letter and kind of began a little dance that went on for about a year of working my way back here. I'm very, very happy to be back in my homeland, and just recently, about 6 weeks ago, permanently relocated. So Cardinal Worrell has released me now permanently, and Bishop Sheridan has accepted me, so he's stuck with me now. So thank you very much. So as I said, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my primary responsibility here in the diocese. I have a couple jobs, but my main job is Director of Campus Ministry. And this is important to me to explain this because I have like a running notebook of the wrong title everyone gives me. Every church I go to, I've been introduced as, this is Father Kyle, we don't know what he does. This is Father Kyle, the chaplain at Colorado College. This is Father Kyle, the chaplain at the Air Force Academy. This is Father Kyle, he works somewhere and we don't know. So, but this is important because I am the first priest to serve as Director of Campus Ministry. We've had wonderful lay people who've served in campus ministry for well over a decade, and they laid an unbelievably firm foundation for campus work. But I'm happy to be the first priest doing this. I also love, sometimes when people ask me who I am, the number one question is, what parish are you from? And of course, I don't have a parish. So my favorite story is actually from this parish. When I first moved to town, I was filling in for Father Mark Zacher quite a bit. And a lady asked me the same thing on the way out of church, Father, what parish are you from? And I said, oh, I don't have a parish. And she took my hand, she said, don't worry, you'll get one someday. So I think people think that I'm being punished or something. I don't have a parish. But I am very happy to be kind of a free agent. I love what I do. And also it's kind of fun because filling in parishes is like being a grandparent. You get to go in and enjoy the wonderful people, but then when people start complaining, you just say, talk to the pastor. And you walk away. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about what it means to be Director of Campus Ministry. And the first question is why? And some of you have heard this before, so act surprised if you've already heard this. So why do we need a Director of Campus Ministry? Well, because 80% of Catholic students leave the church before they turn 23. It's a pretty awful statistic. That comes from the Pew Forum Religious Landscape Survey. The 2008 survey is actually outdated. There's a newer survey out now. It's even worse. The statistics are not good. So some of these things are national problems, and some of them I think are unique to our diocese. The 80% statistic is a national statistic. But one of the real challenges of campus ministry here in the diocese is we have a lot of very, very strong non-denominational programs. Things like Young Life and Crew and Navigators. And it's certainly not to say anything bad about those groups, but I'm going to talk more about this later. There's a lot of confusion. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's all the same thing. As long as my young person does something religious, I don't care if they go to Mass, I don't care if they go to confession, I don't care if they go to the Catholic Church, as long as they're going to Young Life. Well, it's not the same thing, and we're going to talk about that later. Also, we have a large population of college-age students in the diocese. We have many schools, Colorado College, UCCS, which some of you know is projected to double in size in the next decade. UCCS is trying to become the flagship institution of the University of Colorado system because they're the only campus left in the state system that has available land. That's a big thing. So you go up to Boulder, Boulder is jam-packed. There's not room for much else. UCCS has tens and tens of acres, hundreds of acres left to build. So they're really growing their program. We also have a large community college system, and it's very, 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 very important to me to mention that because the #1 title people say when they introduce me, this is Father Kyle, he's the chaplain at UCCS. That's true, but that's not my only job, and it's very important to me because when people associate me only with UCCS, we're leaving a really large component of our demographic out. We have a lot of young people who are not even in college at all. And that's great. Some people have chosen to work, to volunteer, to go into trade school, and it's really important that we engage that 18 to 22, 23 demographic, irregardless of where they're in school or if they're in school at all. And obviously the most important factor is this is our future. This is our future. Our young people are our future. So it's important to engage them. I already talked about this, so I'm just going to breeze through it really fast. But is this new? Well, yes and no. As I said before, we've had a campus ministry program for a long time, so it's important to me to recognize and honor my predecessors. I'm not the first person to do this, but as I said, I am the first priest. Bishop Sheridan brought me on to do this because it's been a priority of his for a long time to have a priest full-time in campus work. So again, I'm very honored to be able to do that. I already talked about this as well, but whom are we trying to engage? Well, really, all college-age people in the diocese. And this is another one of my little semantic points. I always try to say college age, not college, because again, we have a lot of people who are not in college, and we want them to be included. We have a lot of enlisted military here in the city. And a lot of these young men and women are looking for something more, especially if they live on base. They don't necessarily want to be engaged in some of the crazy culture of people who have no religion. They want to be with people of faith. And so we want to engage our enlisted military. We want to engage our working population, our vocational students, and people in trade schools. And I also want to engage students who are home from breaks. A lot of people think that because it's summer, that I must have nothing to do. But actually, summer is almost busier than the school year because we have a lot of people who go to school elsewhere and they're home right now. Some of them are here tonight. I won't embarrass them because college students are sensitive. So, but we have some great students who go to school other places. We have people obviously in-state, and we have people all over the country and really all over the world. And when they come home, we want them to be included as well. What are we doing? Well, hopefully these things would be obvious to you, but we have masses, Eucharistic adoration, we offer confession. We have an RCIA group, so I actually had 3 wonderful students this year who came into the church. 2 of them were baptized, received First Eucharist, and were confirmed. And then I had a really, really great young lady who needed to be confirmed, but was really not very well catechized at all. So she went through the entire program with the other 2 students, and all 3 of them received sacraments during the Easter season. So that's always a real joy to be able to support them in that way. We have Bible study and faith sharing groups. I offer spiritual direction. I also have an assistant named Robin Crocker who is also a certified spiritual director, so she's able to do a lot of good work with our young ladies who may or may not really be as comfortable coming to me as a male. So Robin really provides great balance to our staff. We have a weekly meal that takes place at the house where I live. Some of you have provided food for that, so thank you very much if you've done that. And we have social and service gatherings. We try to do pro-life advocacy, offer discernment groups, and then we also have retreats. So it's a pretty busy program. It's not as busy as I would like, because I would love to be so busy that we would have to assign another full-time priest to this ministry. But we're starting to grow a little bit bigger every year, which is at least an encouragement. We run these programs year-round. So again, it's important that all of you know that if you have young people in your family and your parishes who are home for school, please encourage them to get involved. We have things running usually about weekly in the summer, sometimes twice a week, but we try to offer something year-round because there are lots of students who are engaged in their campus programs at their own schools, and they want to stay engaged when they come home. They don't want to just come home and kind of drift away. They want to stay active. And then obviously things are days, evenings, and weekends. The events that we host, many of them take place on campus, and they take place on many different campuses. We have a lot of our activities are primarily focused at UCCS, because that is the biggest demographic, but we also have activities at CC, and we've done 1 or 2 activities at PPCC. If any of you are at Pikes Peak and you'd like us to come do something on campus, I would love to do that. I love reaching out to new places where people may or may not be familiar. I live in a house very close to UCCS. It's called Father Kyle's house for legal reasons. So some of you know all the backstory to that. We won't go into that, or we'd be here until midnight. But I live in just a residential home, but it's on an acre of land, so it provides a nice setting. We're not right on top of our neighbors. We try to be very respectful, obviously, of being in a neighborhood environment. But the house has enough space that we can at least have moderate-sized gatherings. We can comfortably accommodate, really comfortably, about 20 to 25 people in the basement. We have a chapel that seats 20. Some of you have been to Mass there. And the Blessed Sacrament is reserved at the house, so it's a great place to pray. We also have a nice library, and we have just spaces for people to study and relax and obviously engage with one another, socialize. We also do activities in parishes, and then we do a lot of our things off campus, especially if we're anticipating a larger group. It's too difficult to jam 30 or 40 people into a house. So we really, really, really do need to build a campus center or a Newman Center. You can call it whatever you want. But that's a huge, 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 huge need for our diocese to have a more adequate space for our students to gather, especially a space for them to pray. Because it's a very happy problem to have, but we can't fit. I have a Sunday Mass on campus during the school year. We can't fit in the chapel at the house. It's too small. So it's a good problem to have, but we're having Mass in a classroom, which is obviously not ideal. So we really need to build a chapel, and we need to build a Newman Center. I think that's a huge priority for us as a diocese. Some of the challenges that we face, and this is where all of you can help, one way certainly, is things like publicity. Just helping you spread the word. It almost blows my mind that probably at least once a day, I run into someone who's like, oh, I didn't know we had a campus ministry program? And it's like I said, we've had it for almost 20 years. And yet I'm still running into people on a daily basis who have no idea that we have anything for college students in the diocese. So publicity is one of our biggest challenges. There have been great articles in the Catholic Herald. I did the Bishop's radio show a couple times. We have a lot of social media. We send out emails. We put things in parish bulletins. And yet, for some reason, the word is still not getting through to everyone. So we need to spread the word. Also, it's very challenging to deal with the modern student schedule. Students are busier than ever, and one of my pet peeves, I'm so tired of people saying I'm busy. I try never to say that because it's such an overused phrase. I mean, we're all busy. Everyone's busy. But it's become kind of an excuse for almost all of us to not do stuff that we want to do or know we should do. But the average student in the diocese is not only going to school full-time, but many of them are working full-time. And I have a lot of respect for those students who are doing that. We have a lot of young people who are putting themselves through school, a lot of young people who need that income, but it makes their schedules extremely difficult. It's very hard to find times when a lot of people are free. If you do it at night, people are working, then you try to do stuff in the day, people have class, you do stuff on the weekend, people are working. So we do the best we can, but one of our big challenges is just work conflicts, student schedules. The other challenge, and this is not a bad thing, but we have a lot of college-age people who are just very active in their parishes, and so they choose not to really be that engaged with campus ministry because they're already very active in their parishes. My dream would be that those students would kind of give us 50% of their time and 50% of their parishes. I think it's great that people are close with their families. I love it. I'm very close with mine. But I would love it if some of the really active students in parishes, because they tend to be students who are well-formed, They're prayerful, they go to Mass, they go to confession. Those are the ones I need. I need them to go out and help me engage the less churched students. But that's not happening that much right now. The students who are very well formed are kind of closed in and locked into their parish dynamic. And I need them to be missionary disciples, missionary evangelists with me to go out, because students can reach people that I can't reach because I'm not a student. Obviously, I can't go into the dorms. I can't go into places that other students can go. And then another challenge is just students think it's not for them. And again, I've already said this a lot tonight, but I run into people all the time. Oh, I go to Pikes Peak, I can't come to your stuff. Or, oh, I don't go to UCCS, I can't come to your stuff. And if you take one thing away from this, it would be that it's for everyone. It's not just for UCCS, it's not just for people in college. I've kind of already touched on this, so we'll breeze through there. We touched on this a little already as well, but how can you help? Well, again, spread the word. Also, and we're going to go into much greater detail on this right now, but encourage and challenge your young people, or our young people. That's another thing that's not necessarily happening, and I'm going to go into greater detail in a while about this. But in many ways, we've kind of given up on a lot of our young people. You know, we've kind of said, hey, you know, that ship has sailed. You know, my son or daughter stopped going to church 5 years ago and 10 years ago, or gosh, young people today, you know, all they do is play on their phone and smoke pot and whatever. And that's what a lot of people think, honestly. There's a lot of people who say to me when I tell them that I'm director of campus ministry, oh my gosh, Father, we will pray for you, I'm so sorry. It's like, yeah, hey, it's a good thing, yeah. And the other thing I'd love to encourage is just to come visit. You know, a lot of groups, there's a lot of people in this room who have been to the house. The Sarahs have been to the house. Knights of Columbus have been to the house. Catechists have been to the house. Some pastors have brought their entire staff over just to see the house so they can help their young people feel comfortable. If you're part of a group that would like to come visit, or even if you're not part of a group and you and just a couple friends want to come over, please feel free. We would love to have you, especially during the school year. It's really, really important for these young people to know that they are supported by the diocese. So we're going to switch gears here, but before we do that, does anyone have any questions?
Father, when you talked about the Newman Center, are you thinking of a separate edifice or what? Do you have it?
That's a great question. Yes, mostly yes. I mean, there's different ways to approach the issue. Because we live in a residential neighborhood, there are some possibilities of expanding the house I live in or purchasing an adjacent house. However, there's a lot of legal and zoning and other challenges that come with that. Personally, I think that we should go full speed ahead and buy some land or buy a building. The challenge is we're quite behind. We're behind the curve in buying land around UCCS. The only land that's left, there's very little left, first of all. And to buy something that is close enough so that students can walk is going to be a challenge. There's only one or two little parcels of land left that we might be able to obtain. So please pray for that, because that's going to be a challenge. But again, I think the alternative is to just do nothing, and I don't really think that's a great answer, because the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. And we are way behind. I'm going to talk about this more in a little while, but we are way behind the evangelicals on campus, way behind, light years behind. So we need to continue to dig in and engage our Catholic population before we lose more of them.
Father, I had talked with Valerie on a number of occasions. I thought, you know, we should have a diocesan young adults group. And she said, no, they should be in their individual parishes. And, you know, I still think we should have a diocesan-wide group, you know, social, religious, spiritual, for basically young adults. Where are you on that?
Well, I think, did everyone hear the question? There's a debate in the church about whether or not we should let our young people just remain in parishes, or whether we should try to draw them into community together. My opinion, this is how I see my job. My job is to take this college-age population to pull them together, to work with them, to train them, to help form them more deeply. Many of them are already very well formed, but to form them more deeply, and then give them back to parishes. And that's a key, because it's not, these things are my opinion, but it's not healthy to me when you have 30-year-olds who go to the Newman Center. When I was a chaplain at University of Maryland, I had 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds. Oh, I graduated 15 years ago. Oh, we just love it here. No. I mean, and it's not to sound harsh, but you need to go back to your parish. Parishes need you. And this is how I try to sell it to pastors. These are your these are your future catechists. These are your future parish council leaders. These are your future priests and deacons and religious and members of consecrated life. These are your future parish leaders. So the goal of campus ministry is not to take people and form them and keep them until they're just tired of it and then they kind of drift away. But we need to give them back to their parishes. So we need them so that they can engage one another. That's the thing. So if everybody just kind of stays in their parishes, then it's very difficult to do that. There's also kind of a misconception. I mean, it's partially true, but Colorado Springs, and again, I grew up here, so I get this, but everybody's still like, oh, UCCS is a commuter school. We don't need a campus ministry center by UCCS. It's a commuter school. Well, that's true. There's a large percentage of commuters, but it's not just a commuter school. There's lots of residence halls. There's lots of apartments. There's lots of houses that are going up around campus. So that's why we need to engage, because it's not just about our local people either. We have a lot of students in town who aren't from here, and they do need something, because if you're an 18-year-old who just moved here from California, UCCS, by the way, has a full-time admissions counselor who lives in California now. That's how many people they're getting from there. If you're an 18-year-old from California and you don't have a car, you're not going to Corpus Christi, you're not going to St. Francis, you're not going to St. Patrick's. You're probably going to be going nowhere, Because they get here and they're kind of like, I don't know anyone, I don't know how to get there. Colorado Springs obviously is not a huge mass transit town, we don't have the subway. A lot of people aren't going to spend money to take cabs and things. So they're just not going to go. They're just going to stop going. Mm-hmm.
You have a program, Father, with the Catholic seniors in high school around the area that are going to go to UCS, and might go to UCS, or they're going to do before high school?
I do some of that. I would like to do more. I try to make a point of visiting, especially in the springtime. I try to visit as many youth groups as I can. I try to stay pretty engaged at St. Mary's High School. I try to stay engaged with young adult groups and groups of people who are graduating. I get to do a little bit of that, but not enough. I'm not doing enough of that. And I would really, really like to engage all of your parishes more. So there are some parishes in the diocese who are really, really supportive. They invite me a lot. I go and I do a lot of classes and help with Mass, and people kind of do get to know what I'm doing. And then there's some parishes, I've been here 2.5 years, there's some parishes I've never been to. And it's not for lack of trying. So if there's any way you can go back to your own parish and say, hey, we'd love to have Father Kyle come talk to our youth group or whatever, please encourage your parish to do that, because it'd be great. It's great exposure. And also, people who already know what's out there are much more likely to get involved. If I can engage a high school senior before they graduate, they're very likely to get involved. And the counter to that is if I don't meet somebody, there have been a lot of studies about this. If you don't connect with a young person on college campuses within the first 10 days to 2 weeks of them being on campus, you are not going to reach them, period. Because people lock those schedules down. They come to campus, they start to get involved in stuff, like other groups kind of snatch them up, and they get really involved in something, and then it's like, oh, I don't have any time left. So you have to reach them right away, or it's almost too late. And you really don't get a lot of bites at the apple with young people. It's like they're very quick to, you get one chance, and if you don't, it doesn't click. And that's why when I have activities, I'm always harping on the students who do come. You've got to be welcoming, you've got to reach out, because if someone comes to one of our events and they don't know anybody and no one says hi to them and they don't feel welcome, they will never be happy. So, okay, we're going to switch gears, and this is going to be a real adventure, because despite my relative youth, technology is not my strong suit. So we will see. We'll go on this great adventure together. switching to the other slides, maybe. Yeah. Talk amongst yourselves while I do this. Maybe a topic. When I was a pastor, I taught 8th grade, and my students complained that I didn't have enough pictures in my slides. So I still don't. So you're just gonna have to deal with it. Just offer it up. Okay. So I gave you a relatively lengthy infomercial about campus ministry. But again, the reason I did that is because I just think it's that important. I can't take the opportunity to talk to this many people in one place without going into greater detail about what I do, because I just think it's a really, really, really important thing. But we're not here to talk about me. Thank goodness. We are here to talk about forming communities of missionary disciples, and specifically the baptismal call to holiness. And the reason we're talking about this tonight, I think most of you already know this from previous weeks and just from the fact that you're obviously engaged in what you're doing. But this is part of our diocesan pastoral plan. We're in year 1 of a 5-year diocesan pastoral plan. And one of the things about being here in this diocese that is really inspiring to me is how seriously Bishop Sheridan takes the call to the new evangelization. He is very, very dedicated to thinking outside the box and trying to do things. It's not rewriting Catholic teaching, as we all know. It's not changing the teachings of the church. It's not coming up with some bizarre new ideology, but it's finding new ways to present the truth and to present this very important information. And the first year of the pastoral plan is dedicated to knowing that we are children in God's family. We are brothers and sisters of Christ. The overall goal of this is for adults to deepen their baptismal identity and allow that to shape their daily lives. Again, hopefully this is rather obvious to us, but our faith has to permeate everything that we do. Our faith is not just something we do for 1 hour a week, or if you come to one of my masses, it's usually like 45 minutes a week. But, because I'm a man of few words usually when I'm preaching, not tonight. But it's very important that our faith shape everything that we do. Our baptismal identity has to shape everything that we are. And why? Why do you think? Anybody have any answers? Lots of answers. Anybody have any whys? Why is it important to know that we are formed by our baptismal identity? I know a lot of you. I can call on people. Well, it's important for a lot of reasons, right? It's important because, again, we cannot just circle the wagons and just say, we're all here, we all believe, this is great. Everybody else, too bad for you, good luck, keep warm and well fed. If you've read Forming Intentional Disciples, which I know some of you have, we're very, very lucky to have Sherry Waddell, who lives here in the diocese. Sherry Waddell is an internationally recognized expert in the new evangelization, in making missionary disciples. Sherry Waddell, when she looks at the statistics from the Pew Religious Landscape Survey, her big mantra is, we cannot be a church of maintenance. We have to be a church of mission. If we are a church of maintenance, we will eventually just pretty much die out. And frankly, if it weren't for many people from many other cultures coming into the U.S. and assimilating into our faith, we would be in really, really bad shape. If you look at the demographics of our faith in the United States, if you took out other ethnic groups who've come in, our numbers would be absolutely horrible. So we cannot be a church of maintenance. We have to be a church of mission. We can't just write people off who've stopped engaging in the faith. We have to re-engage them. It's not easy to do, believe me. We all know that. Pope Francis, this is a great quote. I have to give a shout out to Michelle. She gave this to me today. So I just did this slide like 2 hours ago. It's hot off the PowerPoint. Baptism makes each one of the lay faithful a missionary disciple of the Lord. Salt of the earth, light of the world, and leaven that transforms reality from within. That's from our Holy Father, Pope Francis. This is a great quote because it really gets to the heart. I love this part about transformation. Because when we are baptized, we really are transformed. Our lives are transformed. Not because it's some sort of magic, because we know it's not. But the sacraments truly are life-changing. And I don't think we necessarily get that all the time. I don't think necessarily live that way all the time. If we really lived this, our churches would just be bursting at the seams. I mean, especially in regards to things like the Eucharist. If we really think about what the Eucharist is, there would be no reason why we would not want to go to church. And we hear all these excuses all the time. I'm busy, another one of my favorites. I was tired. I don't get anything out of Mass. It's boring. I don't like the homily. I don't like the music. The church is ugly. Well, all those things really they don't mean anything. If we know what the Eucharist is, the Eucharist should be able to triumph all those things. Even the worst homily, even the ugliest church, even the worst music, is still the Eucharist. The Catechism tells us that God, infinitely perfect and blessed in himself, in a plan of sheer goodness, freely created man to make him share in his own blessed life. For this reason, at every time and in every place, God draws close to man. He calls man to seek him, to know him, to love him with all his strength. He invites men to become his adopted children. So again, the overarching goal of the first year of the plan is to know that we are adopted sons and daughters of God. So baptism, why is it important? These are just kind of questions to pray about and think about. We're not going to answer all of them tonight, obviously, because we can't. We take hours and hours. But why is baptism important? It's important, again, because it's life-changing. It's transformative. We become members of the body of Christ, and that's why it's so frustrating. We all know these stories. Well, have you had your child baptized? No, we're going to wait till the godparents can get away. They have busy jobs, and it's like, as a priest, I'm doing all these baptisms for 4-year-olds. And it's better late than never, but why are we baptizing our children when they're 4? Or why are we not at all? Do we know what baptism really is? What are we doing to promote it? How are we encouraging our loved ones, our family and friends to take it seriously? And it really kind of goes to the last question, do we believe that we need a Savior? Do we believe that we need a Savior? Do we believe that we even need to be baptized? Sometimes we fall into kind of the hallmark hard God mindset, like, well, God is loving, God is merciful, everyone goes to heaven because God is love. And so why do we need all these external things? We don't need them, because God's not going to punish, people who don't have faith. God's not going to punish people who don't go to church. God's not going to punish people who've never been baptized. Well, we pray that God is loving and merciful, and we know that he is. But do we believe that we need a Savior, or do we think that we can do it all ourselves? And that's really the question. Do we think that we even need God? And we all know people in our own lives who just think that they don't. I don't need God. Or what happens in a lot of cases is people find out that they need God when they're really, really low. And God is going to be there for them, and the priests and the church are going to be there for them. But a lot of people wait until they're in just dire straits to find out that they really do need God. A terrible illness, they lose their job, the loss of a loved one. It's sometimes just the really tragic times when people finally are shocked into knowing that they need God. And think of all that they've missed out on, this beautiful relationship they've missed out on, in many cases, for decades. This is a great question to ask ourselves, and many of you obviously can't answer this tonight. You have to look it up. I know I did at one point in my life. But do we know the date of our own baptism? Really, really important date. Such an important date. My date of baptism is coming up in July. Write this down if you want to send a card. July 31st, St. Ignatius of Loyola. But do we know the date of our own baptism? We should know that. It's a very important day. It's as important, if not more, than our birthday or anniversary or other dates. And in a town where it's not uncommon at all for people to mention the date they were saved or the date they accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior, how do we respond if people ask us those questions? Some of you have heard George Weigel speak. George Weigel is a fairly well-known Catholic author. He's written a lot of great books, especially about St. John Paul II. But George Weigel's famous response to this question, when people ask him, when were you saved, he tells them the date of his baptism. So that's a great date to know. Once we know the date of our own baptism, once we've come in our own prayer to kind of better understand why it's important to be baptized, why we want to live our baptism, we have to start to really think about what it means to live our baptism. And we start to ask ourselves questions. Again, these are things to pray about and think about, not necessarily things to just touch on right now. But do I believe that God has a plan for me and my life? Do I teach my family that we should seek and do the will of God, even above our own will and the opinion of others? And this is a really big one, obviously, right? Because we live in a world where it's very hard not to get dragged into caring what other people think about us. Despite the fact that I've been a priest for 11 years, and I love being a priest, I'm very proud of the priesthood, I'm obviously proud of my faith, there's still times I go to UCCS in my clerics, and it's like, or I go to Pikes Peak, or I go to CC, and it's like, oh gosh, am I going to get spit on? Oh gosh, am I going to get somebody going to throw a rock at my head or something? I mean, it's like, we do care about what other people think about us, even if we say that we don't. But we have to rise above that. We have to live our baptismal call, we have to live our baptismal identity, and we have to not let ourselves be dragged into that realm of worrying about what other people think. And this is a real problem for young people. It's a challenge. Because, hey, how come I have to come home from my friend's birthday party sleepover to go to church with my family? Hey, how come I can't go on the ski trip because I'm going to miss Mass? Or, how come I have to not sleep in on Sunday morning when everyone else is sleeping in and my parents are dragging me to church? I mean, we care about what other people think. And we have to rise above that. Does anybody have any questions? I know I tend to forget about asking for that. Don't be shy. Okay. I'd like to continue this conversation, but I'd like to take it in a little bit of a different direction. And obviously I'm biased because I work with young people. But when we think about what it means to live our baptismal call, many of us in this room right now are fairly confident in that. We're still working at that relationship. We all are. But what I would like us to think about for the remainder of this presentation is how we can engage our young people, because we know what it means to live our baptismal call, or at least we're on the right track. But we need to think about tonight, and I would like us to think about tonight, how we can try to apply that to the young people in our own lives, the young people in our own parishes, the young people in our neighborhoods, the young people in our workplaces. We need to think about what it means to engage them. Because again, this is the group that we are not engaging. This is the group that we're losing. At the 29th World Youth Day, Pope Francis said, and I quote, "Jesus challenges us, young friends, to take seriously his approach to life and to decide which path is right for us and leads us to true joy. This is the great challenge of faith." And it is a challenge.